Yeah, I think that 65 number is a little bit too low. I mean, if you think about last season, the starting rotation the team had when they went into the year, they had Cole Hamels, but then they had Aaron Harang, Jerome Williams, David Buchanan, and Sean O'Sullivan. And then beyond that, there were just a cast of guys coming in and out, the likes of Severino Gonzalez and Adam Morgan did bail them out for a little while, but it seemed like last year there was this constant up and down, and you never knew who was going to pitch the next day. And at least now they have some pretty stable young pitchers that at least should be a little bit stable and make them better than last year.
Yeah, Frank, and there's a lot of questions leading up to pitchers and catchers. There's going to be some interesting battles. Let's get to the mailbag, some questions listeners had for you. Number one, and I think it's an interesting question because Cody Ashley last year started at third, moved to left, seemed like the transition was great. I mean, not great, but, not awful. I mean, I guess he can handle playing a corner outfield. But could Cody Ashley possibly be considered to swing over and play second base?
I tend to think no. The Phillies actually did try that his first year of professional ball. When the Phillies drafted Ashley in 2011, they didn't really think much of him as a third baseman. And besides that, the Phillies had Harold Martinez, who's never really made it above Double-A, and they had somebody named Michael Franco at Williamsport with him. So he had to play second base because he didn't have the option for third base, and he committed 15 errors in just 64 games. So if you project that out, that's a 40-error season at second base. So after that, they threw him at third base in spring training, his old position, and they said, let's just see what you can do. And to his credit, he held the position down pretty well and made it to the major leagues as a third baseman. But I think now the second base discussion's kind of over, and even as Cody Ashley as a starter, it might be over.
Yeah, and last year I thought they kind of gave him a little bit of a disservice by not letting him play left field in spring training at all. I mean, shagging a fly, nothing, and then sending him to the minors. I think they really biffed that whole situation.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I found it really odd that even last spring they didn't try to see if he was versatile. Everybody knew Michael Franco was coming. Michael Franco is getting rave reviews at the defensive position at AAA, so I didn't understand why the Phillies didn't at least try in spring training, because usually that's when you work these types of things out. But for some reason they did what they did. I think his bat being poor kind of helped the decision to send him to AAA, because if he was hitting, I don't think they would have done it. But yes, spring training is really the place to try these new positions.
Frank Klose is with us. He'll be covering the Phillies for 97.3 ESPN.com. You can check out his full-fledged articles over at Philadelphia.com, part of Sports Talk Philly, where they cover the Eagles, Phillies, Flyers, and Sixers. Frank will be concentrating on the Sixers and be at Philly spring training that first week here. Let's talk about international free agency. That's not an area where the Phillies have had a lot of success. So is that an area where they could start to prosper a little bit more?
I think they will. I mean, we saw what they did trading for some slot dollars from the Arizona Diamondbacks last year. So I think they're going to be really smart about this. And the question I got had to do specifically with two brothers, Yeleski and Lourdes Gurriel, who both came out of Cuba and are looking to sign. So I think in their case they might be in on the younger Gurriel brother, who is just 22 years old. But the older brother, 31 years old, Yeleski, probably not. I think they're going to look for players that are on the younger end. Once you get north of 30, I think it's a really not a match for a team like the Phillies that's looking to rebuild. And actually, since I posted the mailbag, the Phillies attended a showcase for Cuban outfielder Alexi Bell, which I was a little confused about too, because he is 32 years old. They might have just been doing their due diligence, and maybe if he's a bargain, they'll try to get him and flip him. But really, the Phillies will focus their efforts probably on the younger end, where they will have the player for several years, and they really are in a good position to spend after July 1st, when the next batch of spending comes, because other teams had blown past their allotment, and the Phillies had found a way to stay within there. So I look for the Phillies to do a lot maybe after July 1st.
Frank Klose with us, 97.3 ESPN.com, covers the Phillies, at Frank Klose with a K, 973 on Twitter. How about Pete Mackinnon? Do you think he's a placeholder, or does he have an opportunity to really be a long-term manager here? Seems like the players like him. It seemed like the team had a much better attitude following him getting promoted last year after really a disastrous time with Ryan Sandberg. So does Pete Makinen have a future with the Phillies, or is he just kind of a one-year placeholder for Matt Klentak to find out who he wants to be his guy?
Yeah, I think unfortunately for Pete, this is still an interim job without the interim tag. Really, before Matt Klentak came aboard, Ruben Amaro Jr. picked Pete Makinen because of his personal relationship with Makinen and what he knew that he could do. He was actually Ruben Amaro Jr.'s manager in a Venezuelan league a long time ago, and his father, Ruben Amaro Sr., was the general manager. So he had a long history with Makinen, and I think Pete went into it kind of doing Ruben a favor and just kind of seeing what happens. And when you break down what he's going to do for the Phillies versus what he could do for somebody else, he might just simply say, hey, listen, it's either this or I'm a $150,000 a year bench coach or a third base coach for somebody, or perhaps I'm a scout making $80,000 a year. So, I mean, this might be the best option for Pete at this point, but I think even Pete himself doesn't view himself long-term as the skipper. But let's face it, last year Makinen was thought just to finish out the year and that would be it. But, he impressed enough that he stuck around. So probably if the Phillies like the job he's doing with the young players, that they're not going to compete probably even next year. Who knows? Maybe they'll think they can. But I think he's here for this year to get the young players some experience. And who knows, if the rebuild takes into the following year, maybe he gets a shot for that too.
Well, Frank, ESPN.com ranked the Phillies 28th. They project them to go 65 and 97. But one of the things that, they said is good, basically my question is, at 65 is their projection. What do you think a ceiling for this team could be? And if everything kind of fell their way, what is the high water mark for this group?
I think it's really kind of hard to predict right now. The Phillies signed two veteran major league pitchers to be in the starting rotation, and Charlie Morton and Jeremy Hellickson. I don't think they really have long-term plans for either one. I mean, if they're pitching to their abilities and keeping the Phillies stable, halfway through the year, the Phillies are probably looking to flip them in a trade and then deal with the growing pains of the likes of Jake Thompson afterwards. So a lot depends on how long these players are here with the Phillies, and if let's say some of their non-roster invitees in the bullpen work out really well, then they're probably through, and then once they're traded, then you're going to see a drop-off. So a lot of it kind of depends on if they get a deal they like. A lot of it depends on how well those players perform. I still kind of think 65 is a little bit low based on the young starters that the system has. I think they're going to give some stability, but we also must remember at the same time, going into last year, they had Ken Giles, and also, for all his problems, Jonathan Papelbon was a very reliable reliever, and those two are out of the picture, so you'll see a little bit of a drop-off with that.
Philly spring training, pitchers and catchers report tomorrow. Frank will be down in Clearwater for that first week when there's going to be a lot of competition, Frank. I think there's a lot of young players, that number 5 spot in the rotation, as you talked about last week, the closer role, but not only the closer role, the guys that are going to slot in before him. I don't know that there is a solid 5 or 6 guys that have a guaranteed spot in that bullpen. I think some outfield spots are going to be up for grabs. I think it's going to be interesting to see what this batting lineup, what kind of batting order that Makinen puts together. He seemed like he went with Herrera and Hernandez, or Hernandez and Herrera 1 and 2 late in the year until Hernandez got hurt. So I think that's going to be something to shake out down there. So if you're going to Clearwater, there's a lot of interesting stories. And for once, there's a lot of new, fresh faces that makes this an intriguing season, even if playoffs are probably not in the cards.
Yeah, absolutely. The Phillies have, on paper, too many starting pitchers right now. So it remains to be seen if somebody like Brett Oberholzer or Adam Morgan end up being the left-handed pitchers in the bullpen. Because as it stands now, the Phillies have no guarantee of a left-hander in the bullpen with Mario Hollins out injured. So really, yeah, it's a lot could happen. The dominoes could fall one way or another, and really there's a lot to see here. And there's some of these veteran non-roster invitees may really step up. I mean, it's Edward Mujica. Little known fact: he and Dominic Brown were teammates on the 2013 All-Star team. So who knows? Maybe he's got something a little bit left in his tank.
All right, Frank, don't forget sportstalkphilly.com for all of Frank's Philly stuff, 97.3 ESPN.com. Phillies Frank's Monday mailbag is posted right now, and you can get your mailbag questions in. We'll post them every Monday, and Frank will answer them live on the air every Tuesday here at this time. All right, pal, enjoy the week. Get those mailbag questions in, and, of course, a couple of weeks you'll be down in Clearwater.
I can't wait.